Alright guys, so take a look at this motorcycle. This is an Indian Chieftain Elite. I was actually impressed with these Indians. Really nice suspension so far on some of these really big Indians. So this should be pretty interesting to see how this one rides. And then this one, I guess it's upgraded a lot. They said that it's actually hand painted. Look at the paint on that. That's like a really a sparkly paint. That is awesome. All right, got some bars. Kind of an interesting looking bike. Looks almost like a Harley Davidson Road Glide or something like that. Speakers in the bags. All right, let's take a look at this. So, ooh, this one, this one seems a little bit more top heavy than the last one I was on, which is kind of interesting. All right, so apparently you hit the power button and then you have to wait for the boot up, which is weird. And then we're in neutral, so I can start it. All right, here we go. All right, so this is actually a pretty low bike. These are really low. If you can see, even some short people can ride them, which is pretty interesting because on a lot of your Harley Davidsons, it seems like they're a lot taller than a lot of your Indians. Look at this big old floorboard here. That's pretty wild. All right, so I have the sniffles. All right, here we go. All these brand new Indians. We're actually doing Indian demo days. Ooh, it seems like I like the clutch a little bit better on this one. Like the friction zone is a lot closer in. Seems like it's a little more top heavy. I think it was the Challenger. Didn't seem as top heavy as this one. All right, so floorboards, here we go. Ooh, the seat. I don't like the seat as good on this one. The seat's pretty hard. I'm kind of more scrunched on this one. Let's see. Still a pretty good suspension. It seems like you don't have to press as hard around the corners on this one. Let me see if I can move the windshield up. Yeah. Oh, this one, it seems like the windshield goes higher on this one, which is nice. I love the windshield on this one. Way better than the last one. These guys are flying, man. These guys are going really fast. And I don't know these roads very good. This one doesn't quite have the growl as that last one. It's a pretty muffled sound to it. All right, let's see what this thing can do. All right, so we were going almost 70. 65. Pretty good for 65. I feel pretty confident. Seems like my knees are quite a bit higher. Plenty of power. And this one, the seat's definitely not as comfortable on this one. This is the Chieftain. I was just on the. This is the Chieftain Elite. So this is kind of like the CVO. If you kind of compare it to kind of like the Harley Davidson brand. That windshield's just a little too high, which is pretty amazing. It actually goes above where I can see. It has a lot more adjustment as far as the windshield on this one. The weird thing on this is it seems like the windshield is a little bit more wobbly. It's kind of jumping around in the wind a little bit more. Not quite as choppy as the Challenger. The Indian Challenger. All these names, I'm not really familiar with the Indian brand names at all. I just went through the demo days on Harley Davidson, went through BMW, did a few through Honda, and now they have quite a few bikes. Matter of fact, they just they're actually doing like a veterans rally up here in the mountains of Colorado. And let's see. Pretty confident around the corners. I'd say it's a little bit more bouncy, than the Challenger. Kind of the weird thing is on the seat on this one, it seems like, well, I'm actually 6'4", 230 pounds, And usually I need a pretty big motorcycle. I'd say probably the one that fit me best out of all of them was that, let's see, like a downshift, brake, turn. Get used to this bike. Probably the one that fit me the best, that I really liked the most, was that Challenger. I'd say this is a good runner-up. And it's kind of interesting, I didn't really talk about the brakes on either one. The brakes are really good. As a matter of fact, if you look at the front brakes on either of these models, I'm pretty sure this one too has the double disc Brembos on the front, which is kind of like a sport bike brake, which is pretty amazing for a cruiser. You don't really see cruisers like that having that kind of a brake. Well, I don't know, I kind of think back about the sound. Give a little gas. Doesn't seem quite as peppy as the other one that I rode. Still plenty of power. Front suspension, I'd say it's a little bit stiffer than the Challenger. It's kind of interesting if you actually, I'd say this is probably really close to like your Harley Davidson street glides. The only thing I really don't like about this is it seems like the seat is maybe a little too high up, maybe a little too forward for me. I wish that on the other one it seemed like the seat was a little further back and I had a little bit more leg room on the Challenger versus this Chieftain Elite. This one's definitely easier to turn than that Challenger. Seems like the Challenger, you really had to press on the handlebars to go around the corner. This one, it seems like you don't have to press that much. Seems like it's easier to go around the corners on this one. Or I should say just easier to get used to as far as the counter steering. Not quite as choppy as far as the wind on this one compared to, I guess I'm comparing to this Chieftain Elite to the Challenger because that's the last bike that I just drove. So the only two Indians that I've driven so far. So just kind of comparing one to the other. It seems really planted around the corners. Kind of an interesting sound to this one. Back brakes are plenty back brakes. I don't even need any front brakes at all around these corners, which is pretty nice. Sometimes you get on these big cruisers and the back brakes are really bad. I'd say these are really pretty good actually, which is kind of surprising. So we're actually going 65, so a little bit bouncy at 65, I'd say. I would say there's quite a bit of a noticeable difference between these two models. This one is quite a bit stiffer in the suspension. The other one was like riding a pillow down the road, which is pretty wild. And it's funny because if you're used to driving like a street glide or something like this, the Chieftain Elite, you kind of get used to it and you don't think there's anything better until you ride something that's a lot better. And then you realize, man, that suspension isn't as good as it could be. It's pretty interesting riding so many bikes. I think I'm up to like, I don't know, like 30 bikes so far, or 30 or 40. I definitely like the sound of the other one a lot better than this one. Of course, you know, you can do slip-ons, you can change the exhaust really easy. I feel really planted. I'm just kind of at a weird, almost like an uncomfortable seating position for being so tall on this bike. Like I'm too far forward, I think. I don't know if you could change the seat, kind of sit back. It almost seems like you could have a different seat. I'm like almost sitting on the little lip of the seat. Kind of sitting further back then. I think you could change the seat and have a seat that kind of sits you further back. I think that would be more comfortable for me The other thing on this one is the floorboards. Man, they have to be like 3 inches tall, higher up than the other one, which is kind of what you'd see on most of your Harley Davidsons, kind of the higher floorboards. Ooh, this is a really sharp corner here. That's quite a bit of power. Not too bad. So I'm in top gear. Let's see, I was going 65, we were about 3,000 RPM, something like that. So pretty much your standard V-twin cruiser gearing. Nothing surprising there. Let's see, I could bring my windshield up a little bit. I was thinking, yeah, I have a little bit of buffeting. Kind of the cool thing about this windshield is I can bring it way, way up to the point where it's almost too high for me. Which I'm like 6'4", so that's pretty amazing. You know, usually if your windshield gets too high, you're like looking right at the seam, like the top seam, it kind of gets right in your vision. You don't really want it there. You don't want it too high to where you have to look through the windshield, because then if the windshield's dirty, it could be a problem. You kind of want it like an inch below your vision to where you can see just above the windshield. Alright, so I'm starting to get used to this bike. Yeah, it always seems like these baggers, these really big bikes, are a lot easier to get used to than some of your smaller bikes. This one seems really easy to get used to. Both of these actually, the Chieftain and the Challenger, pretty easy to get used to. I'd say it's not as smooth as the Goldwing on the road. It's kind of funny, you can actually feel it really absorbs the big bumps really well, but it seems like it's kind of choppy on the little bumps, which is kind of surprising. Of course, I'm going 55. It's really super smooth at 55. So yeah, anything over 55, it gets a little bit bumpy, but not too bad. It's a pretty good bike. I would buy this bike, and you have a nice big GPS right in the middle. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I like the big dials with the needles for the speedometer and the tachometer, because you can tell exactly what's going on. I've actually seen some bikes that have the digital displays, and sometimes, depending on the displays, you really can't see what's going on the display, because sometimes the sun kind of has a glare. As far as so we're going like 60. I feel a little bit of vibration through the handlebars when I give it gas, but when I let it off the gas, almost no vibration, which is pretty good. It seems like, you know, this one compared, so this is the Chieftain Elite compared to the Challenger, the one I just drove. I'd say probably the Challenger feels a little bit more, quite a bit more stable when you're going 70, 75, like at high speed like that. So as far as the mirrors, I absolutely love the mirrors on these Indians. They're pretty small mirrors, but they're really focused out to where you can really see a whole lot behind you. I was actually on BMWs, and let me tell you, that's probably one things I do not like about pretty much every BMW is that the mirror is almost like the mirror in your bathroom. Like, there's no convex at all, to almost hardly any, to where you really can't see a lot in your mirrors. And this one you can see probably more than any other mirror that I've ever seen. Probably the best like the convex of the mirror, to where you can, it really brings in a lot of what's behind you, which is pretty awesome. You have these big crash bars down here, which is kind of interesting. Don't really notice them, they don't really get in the way. I don't know what it is about crash bars. I actually put crash bars on my bike. On my personal bike, I actually have a Harley Davidson Dyna. And when I put crash bars on my Dyna, It seemed like it kind of gave me a sense of maybe a little bit more protection on the road. Like if something kind of flew up, and instead of hitting me in the leg, it would hit my crash bar. That's kind of the one thing that kind of gives you a little bit more of like a sense of security, which is kind of interesting. So as far as being stable enough to actually wave at another biker, going 60 miles an hour, yeah, no problem at all. Yeah. So there's that. You know, some of these you get on, you're going 60 miles an hour, and you're like, no way am I taking my hands off the off the handlebars because it's just too scary. This one's pretty good. This one's actually kind of nice if you want a bike where you're not really riding on a pillow. You know, some of them feels like they're not even riding a motorcycle because they're so smooth. This one you can actually feel the road. I actually prefer to feel the road a little bit. Alright, so we've been driving for, I don't know, 15 minutes or so. One thing that kind of bothers me in this is that I feel like my feet are too far up and my seat is too far forward. It's not bad. I'd say some of the Harley Davidsons are actually worse as far as making me uncomfortable from a higher floorboard. This one's not too bad. Still a little bit uncomfortable. Alright, so I'm going to put the windscreen down a little bit. Let me see if I can put it down all the way. Alright, so that is the windscreen down all the way. That is quite a bit of wind. If I sit all the way up here, that's pretty smooth wind, actually. As a matter of fact, if that windshield would come down like all the way, like completely, it'd be like driving without a windscreen, which I kind of wish it would. So let's see, I'm in top gear. Wow, we're going over 70. I don't even know we're going that fast. Although you can feel it on this bike. It feels like you're going 70. I'd say probably the sweet spot for this bike could be 65. I don't know if I'd want to do long term at like 75. If I was doing long term like highway, I would probably rather go with the Challenger versus this one. One thing I'd say, the one advantage that this bike has is the ease around corners. It seems like this one's way easier to turn around the corners. So I'd say if you never go on like 70, 75 mile an hour roads, if you're always doing like, you know, 55, 65, yeah, you could probably do this bike. It'd be a lot easier to turn, especially if you had like a lot of twisty mountain roads. Yeah, I'd probably take this bike over the Challenger. Yeah, the weird thing on both these bikes is it kind of has a weird friction zone. We have to let the clutch out maybe like 2.5 inches before you hit the friction zone. So it seems like when you're stopped, you're always like, you know, letting the friction zone out like 2 inches, 2.5 inches until you're right there. So you don't have to worry about it when you first take off, which is kind of weird. I was actually on one BMW that was like that. It seems like both these bikes were kind of the same way, with kind of the weird friction zone on these. And then the other thing is like on the throttle, you turn the throttle a little bit. I think the other one was a little bit worse. But you turn the throttle a little bit and there's like nothing. This one is a little bit top heavy too, so you have to really be careful on these big dressers when you're going really slow with the handlebars turned, because if they start leaning, you could lose it. A lot of times you can't recover. And then down she goes. You definitely don't want that. Alright, kill it. Alright, sweet. Kind of an interesting kickstand. Take a look at that kickstand. It has a metal kickstand, and it goes way, way forward. You know, a lot of the Harleys are coming straight out, and it almost feels like on a lot of your Harleys that the bike's gonna fall over because the new Harleys, it seems like the kickstand comes straight out, but I really like that with the kickstand forward. Alright guys, thanks for watching, thanks for coming along, and I will see you in the next video.